Their job is to protect our individual freedoms, to protect our borders, to protect our families, and certainly not allow people to break bread, calling them non-essential. Certainly not, putting children at home, not in schools. So this is our view. Let's go back to normalcy. Let's follow science. Let's follow the statistics and the data. And enough with the coercion. I don't think it could be sustainable for a society to coerce people or to force people doing something against their will. So it's time for us to, like I said, claim our power back.
Yaakov Pollak here for Rebel News, and as many of you may know, I was the Conservative candidate in the Outremont Mont-Royal riding 4 years ago. I'm here with Sabrina Ait Akil, the Conservative candidate in Outremont Mont-Royal riding in Montreal for the Quebec election happening on October 3. I'm going to sit here with her and ask her a few questions regarding the riding and where the Conservative Party has moved in the last few years and what they're campaigning for. So over the last few years, 2.5 years, COVID has overtaken everything. What is the Conservative Party proposing moving on from COVID? Would they do any restrictions or not?
That's an excellent question. Obviously not. This is not our take on the COVID situation. Of course, during the past 2 years, we've seen a crisis occur in front of our eyes, and I think our political leaders have betrayed us. The position of the Conservative Party is to bring back democracy on the table. It's safe to say that career politicians have made a mockery of our democracy, never, relating to what the people was living throughout the 2 past years. And I know that a lot of pundits and so-called scientists are predicting new waves of COVID. The Conservative Party's position on that is that we need a supermajority of 80% at the National Assembly before, applying any measure. So it's not a one-man or one-size-fits-all, approach. We have seen that Mr. Legault and all the other, opposition parties have basically worked hands in hands to basically restrict Quebecers. So it's definitely not our approach. It's the opposite. We want to make sure that the cure is not going to be worse than the disease. And I think economically you can see, especially for small business owners who had to basically go bankrupt, we remember the essential versus non-essential businesses. So this is definitely not what the Conservative Party wants to do. We are pro-choice, we are pro-common sense, and I think it's up to every single citizen to decide whether it's threatening for them to be outside, to be shopping, to be with people, and this is our position.
Would a Conservative government ever bring back a vaccine mandate?
Absolutely not. We're against mandates. Again, let me be very clear, we're pro-choice. We believe that forcing people to do things against their will in order to live life and call, our fundamental rights privileges unless we get the vaccine, for us it's completely absurd. It goes against everything we believe in. It goes against the Charter of Rights, and this is not our approach. Again, we encourage people to consult their physicians and take a decision according to their health situation. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Some people are more vulnerable than others, and some people just don't want to take, experimental drugs. So it's up to them to make this decision.
Recently, the CAQ government, with the initial support of the Liberals, and later they backed out, introduced Bill 96, which is basically bringing in a lot more French laws and hindering English allophones and anglophones and even francophones that want to be bilingual. Mm-hmm. What is the PCQ's position on that?
Well, we were the only party from the get-go and out of principle to be against it. We never, ever proposed any amendments, unlike the Liberal Party. Mrs. Anglade worked on it, wanted to implement Bill 96, and she even proposed very obscure amendments, especially hindering, CEGEP students and students altogether, forcing them to take 3 mandatory French classes. Let's say someone would like to study in computer science, and they're Anglophones. They've always been, to English schools, and all of a sudden, in their program, they need to take 3 mandatory classes in French. I mean, what do they want, really, that students never graduate? So after the uproar of the English-speaking community, and after, seeing how the population reacted to it, especially the English speakers, they flip-flopped. They changed their mind, and they voted against it. What they will tell you, of course, during this campaign, oh, we voted against it, of course, but they never tell you the history behind Bill 96, that is divisive, and also is not going to reinforce French. And I believe, talking about language restrictions, it's an old quarrel of the past. I think we need to move on. I think a lot of Quebecers, especially Francophones, are sick and tired to hear about, language wars and division.
And what about homeschooling? This is more of government overreach, where the government telling you what you need to learn or not, and them enforcing it. And that involves, I believe it's Bill 15 as well, where the government is basically becoming the master parent of all kids. What is the PCQ's position on that?
So I will talk about homeschooling first. We're the only party that wants to make homeschooling mainstream, allow any parent who wishes to homeschool their kids to do it. Because currently you need exemptions, you need exceptions, so on and so forth. So for parents to homeschool, they have to go through a horrendous bureaucracy to even maybe think of having this permission to homeschool their kids. For us, homeschooling is a form of competition. We see how our, public school system is not maybe the best, it's not optimal, and we can also see that kids lack knowledge. So, but for homeschooling, let me be very clear, we really want to make it mainstream and give that choice to any parent who wishes to homeschool their kids. And in regards to Bill 15, that makes the state a super parent, we at the Conservative Party are very well aware that this, the fact that the state became the super parent is not recent. It's been like this for years. But essentially what it means, whenever somebody tells you that the state is a super parent and that kids belong to the state, it's, a very dangerous path we're in. So we're not for that. We're for the parents to be the parents of their children.
What is the Conservative Party of Quebec's position on pipelines and fracking, basically making sure that we use more Canadian oil and less oil that comes from not so free countries?
Well, our position is clear in terms of the exploitation of our natural resources. We're for innovation, and we're for the exploration of our natural resources. It's extremely important to mention that we want to be independent, and we don't want to depend on gas coming from abroad or petroleums coming from abroad. We want to explore the region of Lower Saint Laurent, where we have natural gas, and we really want to, profit from our resources. There is also the project GNL that was, very much popular 4 years ago when Mr. Legault wanted to basically allow a pipeline and allow the gas to come from Alberta, and then it would be liquefied in Quebec and then transported to abroad, essentially Europe, eventually, maybe not Asia, but Europe for sure. And it would have been an interesting opportunity for us to be in the gas market, in the liquefied gas market. We wanna put it back on the table. The Conservative Party, we know that people from Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean are accepting the project. Up to 68% of the population agree to GNL. And by the way, no taxpayers' money is going to be invested in this project. It's completely a private investment of $14 billion. And of course, the economic repercussions will be just very beneficial for Quebec as a province and for our population.
And what is the PCQ's position on taxes? More taxes or less taxes?
No. Definitely not more taxes. We want to lower the taxes, and we have the most ambitious program when it comes to lowering the taxes. It's 2%. And by the way, we're the first to introduce this measure. And then the Liberal Party, as well as the CAQ, I can say it. I think I can use the word plagiarized us, because it proposed also measures very, very recently, actually. So us, it's 2%. I believe the Liberal Party is 1.5% and the CAQ 1%, or the other way around. Don't quote me on this, but it's either or. So we really want to send the message to the population that we want them to work and to keep their money in their pockets. It's up to the state to make this sacrifice. We've seen these past 2 years, our government was spending money like there's no tomorrow. We have a debt here in Quebec that is horrendous.
And back to COVID for 1 minute. With all the people receiving COVID fines, including myself, what should happen to these fines, like the curfew fines, the COVID, people having people over, family? What is the PCQ's proposal for that in terms, should people pay them, or should it go through the court of law, or should they all be thrown out and scrapped altogether?
If you're asking me my personal opinion on it, I think they should be scraped, and people should not be paying these fines. But our approach, do we have a specific measure for this? I would believe that we would recommend to the population or to whomever, received fines to go through the legal system. However, if we're a majority government, I wouldn't be surprised that we will ask the Justice Department to just ignore those fines and to the people not to pay the fines, because for me, that was illegal to fine people because they're going about their business. So our position is definitely not to make them pay money because they expressed their opinion or because they went against unjust decrees. And that's our position. I am not a career politician. This is my first time running, and I'm doing it for one reason specifically. The past 2 years has reshaped my views on life, and not only me, I think a lot of people. It's time for us to claim our power back. It's time for us also to say enough, and the only way to do it is through this democratic process. These career politicians are completely disconnected from reality. They made a mockery of our democracy. They have divided us, and a conservative government, or at least a conservative official opposition, is going to defend your interests, is going to defend your families. And many of us are running for the first time because we can't stand that the government, we can't stand, we can't let them be in our lives and tell us how to run our lives. Their job is to protect our individual freedoms, to protect our borders, to protect our families, and certainly not allow people to break bread, calling them non-essential. Certainly not, putting children at home, not in schools. So this is our view. Let's go back to normalcy. Let's follow science. Let's follow the statistics and the data. And enough with the coercion. I don't think it could be sustainable for a society to coerce people or to force people doing something against their will. So it's time for us to, like I said, claim our power back.
And I just want to remind the viewers, regardless for who you vote for, make sure to go out and vote October 3rd. It's an election. It's super important to show up and vote. It's the most important part.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more reports of the Quebec elections, please check out quebecelections.ca for all the updates.